I got to see one of the first screenings of Wake Up Dead Man, the third Knives Out mystery directed by Rian Johnson, starring Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc. And right off the bat, I just want to let you know there's going to be no spoilers in this video. I know that's a big deal for a Knives Out movie, and I'm not naive to the fact that I am very lucky. I got to be one of the very first people ever to see this movie at the Toronto International Film Festival this year. But even being at the film festival, I probably saw like the third or fourth screening of this ever. Even being on the ground there were people that went to the opening night premiere and were already pretty much spoiling the movie. And it's by people who go to these festivals as press. They come out and they're like, oh my God, this actor was a great lead in the movie. They should do more Knives Out movies being Daniel Craig's sidekick. They're tweeting things like, oh, wait for this person's final moments in the movie. They are excellent. They're going to get an Oscar nomination for their performance. It's like shit like that just bothers me. And by the time I got to catch the movie, like I had known such little things about the movie, but even knowing those things, I was able to piece together pretty quickly a lot of the things that were probably happening in the movie. And I don't want you to be one of those people. I don't want to make a review that spoils a lot of those things. I'm going to be as very cryptic as I possibly can about a lot of things in this movie. I want to give you my general impressions about the film, about the cast, without getting into any specifics about certain people. I want to just tell you how I feel about them as a collective group. I'll talk about where this ranks in terms of the other two Knives Out movies. I just want to give you my overall impressions without ruining anything, because the people that are fans of these movies don't want to get spoiled everything before they watch it. I would hate to watch a review and be able to put together a lot of things before I even get to see the movie 2 months from now. So I promise you are safe on this video. There is one point towards the end where I will talk about one specific character because they are revealed, I guess, within the trailer to play a very specific role in the movie. So for those of you that haven't seen the trailer, I'll give you a warning before I talk about that character specifically. And then if you've seen the trailer, you won't have to be worried because it very clearly shows the main plot point of the movie, the thing that incites the entire mystery. So with all those warnings out of the way, let's talk about Wake Up Dead Man. This is, like I said, the third Knives Out movie so far. And in terms of my thoughts on Knives Out as a franchise, in terms of Wake Up Dead Man, Glass Onion, and the original Knives Out, I like all of these movies. And I would say for the most part, a lot of people would put the first two films kind of close together in terms of which one people like more. I think the general sentiment is that Knives Out is liked a little bit more than Glass Onion, but I don't think there's a lot of people out there that think Knives Out is great and Glass Onion sucks, or vice versa, that Glass Onion is great and Knives Out sucks. I think those people are few and far between. I will say though, if you are one of those people that heavily prefers Knives Out to Glass Onion, I think you're really gonna like Wake Up Dead Man. It feels like it shares a lot in common with the first movie. And if you liked Glass Onion but didn't really like Knives Out, there's still a chance you would like Wake Up Dead Man. I think the thing that makes Knives Out so cool is that all three movies feel distinct, but like they're cousins in a way. Like they're all part of the same family, but they all got these weird different quirks about them that makes them kind of interesting compared to the other two movies. But Glass Onion definitely feels like the odd one out of the trilogy. But that also happens to be my personal favorite so far. And I found out real quick that it's not the popular opinion, apparently. It just feels like when Glass Onion came out, a lot of people really enjoyed it. A lot of people were saying they preferred it to Knives Out. I would say a majority still preferred Knives Out, but it seemed like a lot of people held it pretty close in contention. And for what it's worth, whenever I was in Toronto and heard somebody ranking the three Knives Out movies, I don't think I heard a single ranking that didn't go Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man, Glass Onion from everyone I listened to. I probably heard that ranking about 5 or 6 times. So I think it's safe to say that will probably be the general opinion of the public. If you're asking me what my personal ranking is so far, I would probably go Glass Onion 1, Knives Out 2, and Wake Up Dead Man 3. But I think they rank really close together. It's not like one of these trilogies where there's a huge drop off between the second and third spot. And I could see a case where a lot of people might actually think Wake Up Dead Man is the best movie. It gives you more maybe to think about compared to the first two movies without getting into too many spoilers. And granted, I've only seen every single one of these once, so I am going based off memory of the first two movies. But I do think if I were to rewatch all of them, I think Wake Up Dead Man is going to hold up pretty strong on a second or third watch. It's not only a good movie, it's a really good Knives Out whodunit mystery. You know, I think there's very few franchises out there that are being as consistent as the Knives Out franchise so far. But I think one thing that is immediately noticeable when you watch this, especially compared to the first two movies, is the setting. It feels a lot darker in tone than, especially Glass Onion. Glass Onion was so bright and in like this European setting. This is very northeastern America, and I grew up in New Jersey, so I am very familiar with that sort of late fall, borderline winter vibe, you know, where the trees are pretty much dead, but there's no snow going on yet. It's got a really distinct, crispy feel that I am a sucker for. I love that time of year, and I think Wake Up Dead Man really portrays that feeling really well. And the basic setting of Wake Up Dead Man is this local church. I believe the town is somewhere in New York, and the main cast is an assembly of 2 priests and pretty much a lot of the main churchgoers within the small town. But I think the setting works for 2 very specific reasons. For one, the movie feels really cinematic, and that's not something I could say about every Netflix movie these days. They just have so many times where it's clearly on a soundstage, and there's nothing wrong with shooting on a soundstage, but this feels like a real town and a real place. And both Knives Out movies before this also felt pretty real to a degree, but they still felt very much like we're on a movie set. Wake Up Dead Man feels like you're in a church a lot of the times. And I gotta give Netflix credit where credit is due. You know, this feels like a real movie. And Netflix hasn't made those all the time. And I will admit, I was pretty impressed with a lot of the sets. There's not a ton of sets in this movie, especially maybe compared to the first 2, but the sets they do have look really good. And I kind of like the more grounded nature to this one. From the cinematic perspective, a lot of the shots feel more inspired than the first 2 movies. The first 2 definitely have like iconic things about them. The first Knives Out has those cool shots in the room where it's like all the knives around the chair or whatever when they're interviewing and interrogating all of the suspects. So Knives Out has that cinematic quality to it. But Wake Up Dead Man has some shots that have really stuck with me. There's one in particular where 2 people are talking in the woods and you see something moving in the background. And that shot has stuck with me more than a lot of the movies I've seen so far this year. It's definitely a cooler shot in my head than anything I've seen in the Rian Johnson Knives Out movies. And in a world where it feels like a lot of people could phone in a Netflix very high budget kind of movie, I don't think Rian Johnson does that. I think he has delivered a really solid, up to par 3rd movie in a trilogy. And we know there have been many times that has not happened. But the other reason I think this film works with its setting is that it does this interesting thing where it's really playing around with the idea of faith. And maybe not in a way I'm used to seeing from a lot of directors do it. You know, we live in a time where a lot of people are pretty cynical about religion for various reasons that are very understandable. And I think Rian Johnson, through these characters, is trying to examine his own faith, what he believes about religion, about religious institutions, about how they definitely have their problems, but how certain people can try and bring the best out of it and make a place that feels welcoming. I feel like that's all I can talk about without getting into the movie. But my friend Amanda, who has the channel Amanda the Jedi, put it best where it's like, you know what? But by certain points in the movie, this is a church I probably would go to. But there's definitely times where you wouldn't want to be at this church. There's definitely shit that is going awry. And that is, of course, due to one, maybe multiple, maybe all of, maybe none of the cast in this movie. It's a Knives Out movie. You never know what's going to be the thing that sets some people off. And if I'm looking at this cast as a whole, I would say I'm kind of mixed about it. And again, I'm not going to get into anybody specific. I'm just going to talk about generalities about these characters. So I will say there are definitely highlights in this movie. I would say off the top of my head, like 2 or 3 people that really stand out. And I would say those highlights stand up to a lot of the highlights from the first 2 Knives Out movies. I wouldn't say any of them are like the definite best character in a Knives Out movie. You know, like I think the first movie has overall the best cast still. And I think Glass Onion maybe doesn't have as overall solid of a cast as the first movie, but the standouts there, man, like Kate Hudson is amazing in Glass Onion. And I would say 3 of the people in Wake Up Dead Man are really good. Some of them are close to amazing, but they definitely stand out more compared to the rest of the cast, who a lot of them just feel really wasted in their roles here. A couple of them have some decent moments, but most of them just feel pretty forgettable. There's one performer in here. I was so excited to see what they would do with the Rian Johnson Knives Out kind of dialogue. And they have offensively minimal screen time. Like, they have nothing to work with. They leave 0 impression. If you didn't know who this performer was, because they definitely are a more notable actor right now, you would think this is somebody that it's their first movie that they just happen to get cast in a Knives Out movie. It's an offensive waste of their talent. I don't know if they were supposed to have more in the movie and it just got cut a little bit, but I was genuinely surprised. There are a lot of people really excited to see this specific person in a Knives Out movie, and they are going to be massively disappointed when they rewatch this. There are a couple of them that I think are like solid. You know, like I don't think they're all offensively wasted like that one character is, but I do think that the other two do a good job at giving everybody in the cast more time. And Wake Up Dead Man just really puts emphasis on, one character in particular. And one thing I found pretty interesting that is really not a spoiler, I promise, is that Daniel Craig really isn't the main actor in this movie. He doesn't show up for about, I checked my watch during the movie, it's about 40-ish minutes into the film, which I really wasn't expecting, but I do think it really works in the case of the Wake Up Dead Man story. I think you get a really good foundation of how the people in this parish operate. You get to see a little bit of each of them, you know, and start to build up a lot of those characters. Some of them get built up a lot more than others, but I do think the initial setup of the film really works. And I think the person that is the lead of the film is really solid here. But at this point, I do want to talk about one thing that is mentioned in the Wake Up Dead Man trailer. Not mentioned, it is shown. It is being tweeted about, you know, discussing film ruined that reveal for me. And I was in Toronto waiting to see one of the first screenings. I tried my best not to get spoiled anything. I still got spoiled this, but the trailer shows it off. So if you've seen the trailer, you can stick around. I'm not going to spoil anything else about the movie, but if you haven't seen the trailer yet and you want to go in completely blind, I would say now is a good time to click off the video. But for everyone that's sticking around, let's talk about Josh Brolin, who is definitely one of the three people I find to be a highlight of this movie. I mean, I love Josh Brolin. I'm a big fan of him. He's one of my current favorite actors. He probably plays a little bit of himself a lot recently, but I don't mind that. I like what Josh Brolin plays. He plays one of the priests in this movie. It does feel like he's playing the most loud version of himself, but he has some of the best lines in the movie. He's a huge part of the first 35 to 40 minutes because, as you see in the trailer, he is the one that dies. So he is the one that the mystery is built around, and you got to make sure you know as much about that character as you can within those first 40 minutes. And the only complaint I have about his character is that since he is so good in the movie, I wanted to see so much more of him. I kind of wish one of the other people was killed off because every time he was on screen, I was just so into it. I really missed when he leaves the movie. And that's really the only major thing spoiled in the trailer, which I was actually kind of surprised by. I'm not surprised they showed his death because it is like the end of the first act, and then you get the rest of the mystery once Daniel Craig starts coming in. So if you watch the trailer and feel like you've seen too much, I really don't think you have. I think you're going to be in for a good time. This is going to play just as good as the other two Knives Out movies. I don't see a lot of people disliking this unless you don't like the first two Knives Out movies. Like, this one is not going to change your mind at all. If Rian Johnson wants to make a few more of these, I would be super down. If someone else tries to come on board, like if they're going to keep doing Knives Out movies but Rian Johnson doesn't write and direct them, I would probably lose more interest. It's not my personal favorite franchise out there, but if you are into the first two movies, you're going to have just as good of a time with this one. My overall score for Wake Up Dead Man, aka Knives Out 3, is a 6 out of 10. I've been adding scores to my reviews. A 6 out of 10, in my opinion, is a good movie. If it makes you happy, I think this is an 8 out of 10 for a lot of people. It's a solid film. I would give the first Knives Out a 6 out of 10 for what it's worth. I would also probably give Glass Onion like a 7 out of 10. I really liked Glass Onion when I saw it in theaters. I would have to rewatch all three of them. I am overdue for a Knives Out 1 rewatch. Like I said, this is probably like by a hair my least favorite of the three, but it's not to a degree where I wouldn't recommend this. If you can see it in a theater when it does that limited run, I would definitely recommend it. I know when Glass Onion came out, I think it was for like a week, but AMC had screenings. I was able to see that one in the theater during the 1 week in a little South Jersey movie theater. So I think it will get a decent release when it comes out. So hopefully you get the chance to see it on a big screen. It's a fun movie to watch with a crowd for sure, like every other Knives Out movie. And I guess that's it. I have more Toronto videos coming out. I've seen Frankenstein, No Other Choice, Hamnet. I did watch One Battle After Another. I want to rewatch it, I think, before I put my video out on it. But for me, this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching as always. And if you like what I have to say, be sure to subscribe. And I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.